It was well past midnight when Brad Pitt first heard the knock on his trailer door. Not a loud bang, not even insistent, just deliberate. 3 soft taps, perfectly timed, each one echoing a beat of something he couldn't name. He paused, holding his whiskey glass midair, and glanced toward the door. The desert outside was still, silent as a photograph. They were shooting on a closed lot in Nevada, some abandoned western town that hadn't seen use since the 70s. Everyone had gone for the night. Or at least, they were supposed to. Tap, tap, tap. Again. Brad stood, slowly. A strange tightness coiled in his chest as he approached. When he pulled the door open, no one was there, except for the envelope. It lay at the base of the steps, crisp and white, no markings except his name, typed. Not handwritten, not signed, just Brad, in the center. He picked it up. The paper felt warm, like it had been sitting under sunlight for hours. But it was night. Inside was a single script page. The formatting was professional, too professional. He'd read thousands in his life, but this one made the air hum. Interior, Brad's trailer, night. Brad opens the door, sees no one, just an envelope. He reads this line. He looks up. Someone is watching. Brad, to the empty desert. Is this a prank? He looked up, heart hammering. The desert remained silent. But something shifted in the dark. Not a shape, not a person, just awareness. He turned back inside and closed the door. The next day on set, no one mentioned anything strange. The director, Tom Yeller, barked orders. Cameras rolled, lights blazed. But Brad couldn't shake it. He didn't sleep. That same envelope was on his bed in the morning. Again. New page, scene 2. Interior, Brad's bedroom, morning. Brad wakes to find the envelope again. He opens it. He begins to lose sense of time. This is not a dream. He does not remember reading this before. But he has. And he had. Or had he? By part 3 of filming, the movie's script began mirroring things that hadn't been written. Lines he never rehearsed. Scenes that weren't in the dailies. And yet, everyone else on set acted like it was normal. Samantha Jules, the co-star playing the haunted widow, whispered to him in one scene, "It's always been you, Brad. You've played this role before." He froze. What line was that? She blinked, confused. It's in the script. He checked the script later that day. The line wasn't there. One night, he tried burning the envelope. The fire started, but the paper didn't curl, didn't blacken. It just hissed, like celluloid film catching flame, and vanished in a blink, leaving behind the faint scent of theater curtains and formaldehyde. The camera crew had begun filming him without rolling. Extrational desert set, dusk. Brad realizes the director never called cut. The take has never stopped. He is not acting. He is remembering. He stood there for hours. The sun dipped low. The fake saloon in the distance cast long shadows. There was no crew anymore. No cameras, no sound, just silence. And him. And one last page in his hand, slowly vanishing into ash. He didn't remember walking into the saloon, but here he was. The doors swung behind him with that classic Western creak, even though there was no wind, no crew, no sound design, just silence and dust motes dancing in the sunlight that streamed through the warped slats. The set had always been a replica. The bottles behind the bar were glued to the shelves. The piano was hollow. The mirror cracked. A stylistic choice. But now it felt old, real, as if time had crawled in through the floorboards and stayed. Brad walked to the bar and placed his hand on the counter. It was sticky with something. Not glue, not paint. Something dark, dried. "Cut," he muttered to no one. "Okay, seriously. Cut." No one answered. From the back room came a familiar voice. "You always die in this one, Brad." He froze, turned. A figure emerged, slouched, disheveled, holding a clapperboard but no face. The slate read, "The final, take, scene 41B, take 1, director, unknown." "Who are you?" Brad asked, voice low. The figure tilted its head. A flicker of light caught where eyes should be, like camera lenses. "You played this before," it said. "Back when you were younger. You just didn't notice." "I've never shot this film." "You have. You've shot it 100 times. Every time you forget. Every time you read the script too late." Brad backed away. "This is a nightmare." The figure stepped forward, clapperboard now split in half like a broken jaw. "No, Brad. This is a reshoot." Later that night, he found himself on set again, but this time it wasn't the desert. It was his own home. But not quite. Photos on the walls he didn't recognize. Awards he never won. A version of his life reimagined. The faces of children he didn't have. The voice of a woman he once loved, echoing in another room. He wandered through the halls, past memories he didn't remember filming. Each door he opened showed a scene, a hospital room, his hands covered in someone else's blood. A press conference where no one clapped, only stared. A funeral, his own, but with no casket, just a reel of film slowly unraveling on the ground. In the hallway mirror, his reflection lagged behind. It moved slower, blinked twice for every once he did. And then, without warning, it smiled, while he didn't. Brad smashed it with his fist. No crack, no sound, just cut to black. He woke up on the director's chair, not in it, on it, curled like a child. The nameplate now read, "Interior Memory, Timeless." Brad opens the script. He realizes it was never fiction. He looked up. A camera stood in front of him. The red light was on, recording. He awoke inside a room made of mirrors. But these weren't ordinary mirrors. They didn't reflect him. They reflected roles. In the mirror on the left, he was Achilles, shining armor, the weight of myth behind his eyes. In the next, Tyler Durden, sneering, bleeding, beautiful and cruel. Further down, Benjamin Button, growing younger as he stared forward in sorrow. And then, one mirror showed him as he was now. Not Brad Pitt, just Brad. Tired, lost, unscripted. He tried to look away, but the room had no doors, only frames, glass upon glass, character upon character. Each mirror began to speak. Lines from films, sure, but twisted. They had changed. "What's in the box?" "Script. You wrote it. You just didn't know." "I want to destroy something beautiful." "You did. Yourself." "I've lived long enough to see the world turn to ash." "You didn't live. You acted." His knees buckled. A mirror shattered. And from the shards rose another Brad. Not a clone, a cut. The version of him who never made it. "Do you remember me?" the cut asked. I don't understand." "You chose fame. They cut me. I'm the version of you who stayed unknown, who walked away from the camera." Brad backed away. The cut advanced. "You thought it was the directors pulling strings, the producers. No, it was you. Always you. Every scene you accepted, every one you didn't. You edited your own soul." More mirrors shattered. Now the room was a storm of Brads. All ages, all timelines. And they were arguing. He was happiest before the fame. Remember the Kansas night sky? No, he needed the light. The world had to see him. He sold his pain. He made pain into art. They began to fight. And Brad, the real one, shouted, "Stop!" Silence. The broken glass hovered in the air like frozen snow. Then, a door appeared. Just one. Its label, the final take. Brad touched the handle, but before he could open it, a voice, familiar, broken, real, called behind him. "Don't go." He turned. It was his father, not an actor playing him, his real father, but younger, like in Brad's memory. "I'm sorry," Brad whispered. "For what?" "For being gone so long." His father nodded, tears in his eyes. "Don't forget who you were before they called you action." Brad looked back at the door. He had to know. He opened it. Inside, only darkness, and the sound of a director calling. Rolling, scene 1, real life, take 1. and Brad. The door creaked open. It led into a grand theater, opulent yet decaying, like a once celebrated cinema palace abandoned to time. Red velvet seats stretched infinitely in every direction. The chandeliers above flickered with candlelight, though no fire burned. The screen in front glowed, but nothing played. Brad stepped into the aisle. The air was heavy with silence. Not absence of sound, presence of waiting. He moved forward, step by step. A soft rustle. He turned. The seats were filling, not with people, but with characters. Characters he had played. Characters he almost played. Characters from scripts he rejected, from dreams he never chased, from stories that could have been. Tyler Durden sat with sunglasses on, arms crossed. Achilles sat stiffly in battle-worn armor. The Curious Case version of himself, aged in reverse, smiled knowingly. Detective David Mills gripped the edge of his chair, sweat glistening on his brow. Even background extras, forgotten faces in cafe scenes, bar fights, courtroom benches, took their place, all of them watching. Brad approached the stage, breathing shallowly. Then a light flickered on above the screen. A single voice echoed, presenting your life as you never saw it. The screen began to play, but not in film, in reflections, mirror-like footage. His memories, his regrets, his fears, stitched into scenes with dramatic flair. Arguments he suppressed, roles he compromised, loves he pushed away for the sake of fame. He saw the moment he first heard a crowd scream his name and realized it meant nothing if no one called him by his real one. He saw himself staring in the mirror backstage after receiving an Oscar and feeling absolutely hollow. He saw the night he walked out of a hospital room, never returning. He couldn't move. Then one chair squeaked. A new audience member entered. He wore no costume, no makeup, just a hoodie, jeans, a microphone clipped to his shirt. Brad narrowed his eyes. It was a talk show host, one that never existed in real life. The host stood center stage. "Mr. Pitt," he said, "do you regret it all?" Brad didn't answer, so the host pressed, "Which version of you was real?" Silence. "Who directed this story?" More silence. Then the host held up a camera, pointed it at Brad. "Say something real, one take, no script." Brad stared into the lens, but this time he smiled, just barely. I don't know what's real." The mirror shattered, not with sound, but with understanding. Brad blinked, and the world around him shifted. Now, he was seated at an old typewriter in a smoky apartment that smelled of ink and coffee gone cold. The walls were lined with unmarked film reels and crumpled pages. Rain tapped gently against the window behind him, but there was no cityscape outside, only blackness. And across the room sat a man in a bathrobe, typing furiously, cigarette dangling from his lips. His face was blurred, his movements frantic. Every key he hit typed a moment Brad had lived. Interior, hotel room, night. Brad sits on the edge of the bed, unsure if he's still alive or merely repeating a script. Cut to, a laugh he didn't mean, a kiss he never felt, an award he never wanted. Brad stood, but the floor swayed like film strip reels unspooling. "Who are you?" Brad demanded. The writer didn't stop. He only said, "I've been writing you since the beginning, since you first decided to perform instead of feel." Brad lunged forward, grabbing the typewriter and ripping out the page, but it kept typing, without hands, without ribbon, without permission. The words bled onto the paper. You cannot stop what you agreed to. You signed in blood. Fame is a contract with the void. A sudden gust blew open the window, and through it flew thousands of script pages, swirling like ash. Each one had titles Brad had never heard. The Forgotten Role, The Actor's Ghost, Take 1001, The Final Scene, The Life You Could Have Lived. The writer stood now, staring at Brad. I never wrote your end, he said, because I never knew where you'd stop pretending. He handed Brad a fresh page. Blank. The typewriter hissed. You finish it. Brad stared at the white void of the page. Sweat ran down his temple, and for the first time, he typed. Fade in. Brad wakes up. He remembers nothing, but he feels everything. A beat. The writer smiled. That was never part of the script. Suddenly, the apartment crumbled. Walls fell like curtains. Reels snapped like necks. The only thing left was the blank page, still glowing, hovering in the void. Brad fell through it. The red light was still blinking. Brad followed it across a catwalk, suspended over a vast, dark chamber. Below, stagehands stood frozen. Not statues, not mannequins, but people mid-movement, caught in a single frame, as though someone had hit pause on their lives. He descended a rusted staircase, boots echoing with every step. At the bottom, he found a massive velvet curtain, dark crimson, frayed at the edges. It spanned wall to wall, 100 feet wide and impossibly tall. Words were stitched across the hem in gold thread. Behind this lies the take they never let you see. He hesitated. A whisper behind him. Don't. He turned. A young boy stood barefoot, pale, eyes like twin film reels spinning slowly. Who are you? Brad asked. The boy blinked. I'm the version of you that never auditioned, never got famous, never became him. He pointed at Brad. Are you happier? The boy shrugged. I'm forgotten. You're remembered. But which of us is real? Brad stared at the curtain. I need to know, he whispered. He touched it, and the curtain bled. Thick, black-red ichor seeped down the fabric. It smelled like burning celluloid and old roses. His fingers trembled, yet he pulled the curtain apart. Behind it, a hospital hallway lit by flickering fluorescence. A young woman on a gurney, sobbing. A nurse yelling, "He can't go in there!" Brad stepped forward, and the scene shifted. Now he was holding a script. But every line on every page read the same. Say your line. He dropped the pages. They fluttered upward instead of down, like reverse snowfall. Then came the voices, dozens, hundreds, fans, directors, journalists, lovers, haters. You're the best. You're overhyped. He's a genius. Plastic surgery. Another divorce. He never deserved the Oscar. He was my whole childhood. He's nothing without the camera. He's everything. Brad collapsed to his knees. The boy reappeared. Don't you get it? He said. There is no Brad Pitt. Only roles, only scenes, only lights. And now they're all turning off. The lights in the hallway began flickering out one by one. Brad ran. Back through the curtain, back onto the empty stage. But the red light was gone. Only a mirror remained in its place. And in it, no reflection. Just static.
The chair was too small, the spotlight too bright. The set around him was vaguely familiar, a talk show studio, frozen in time as if copied from a memory of the 90s, velvet backdrop, plastic plants, a painted skyline of LA at dusk. There was no audience, just two cameras, both on him, and then a host appeared. Not a person, a shape wearing a suit, no face, Just a flickering television screen for a head, showing old clips of Brad smiling on red carpets, laughing in interviews, kissing co-stars in iconic roles. The clips looped. The smiles never blinked. "Welcome back," said the voice. Staticky, charming, familiar. "Today we're talking to the man who outlived his myth." Brad said nothing. The host leaned in, the screen crackling. How does it feel to be the last take? The final reel? The ghost in the edit? Brad's voice was hoarse. "What is this?" The screen shifted, now playing a funeral, his own, surreal. Crowds gathered, paparazzi lights flashing like thunder. No coffin, just a director's chair with Brad Pitt stitched in gold, surrounded by candles and mirrors. "Tell us," said the host, "when did you stop being a person?" Suddenly, the studio walls dissolved. Now they were on a film set, mid-shoot, cameras rolling, except no one moved. The boom operator stood mid-step, cigarette ash frozen in mid-air. The director sat slumped, eyes sewn shut with black thread. Brad looked down. He held a script again. This time it had a title, The Final Take. No pages inside. Only a line, written in blood across the inside cover. "Say it right this time." He turned to the host. "This isn't real." The screen on its head showed his childhood home, then his first audition, then his mother crying, then a dark room with no exit. "It's more real than anything you've made," the host replied, "because it's uncut. No edits, no retakes. Just memory, raw and bleeding." The stage cracked beneath Brad's feet. Flashes of fire, film reels melting, a voiceover he'd recorded for a movie that never came out whispered in reverse. He screamed, and the set vanished. He was now alone in a theater. One chair in the front row, a projector above. The screen ahead played his life, but scenes he didn't recognize. Moments that never happened. Roles he never took. A version of him that chose love over fame, art over spectacle, truth over story. He stood there, trembling. Then a voice whispered from the projector booth, "Would you watch it all again? If you knew how it ends?" Brad turned slowly and whispered back, "Only if I forget." There was a name missing from the ending. Brad noticed it first in a dream. A familiar crawl of white text over black, rolling upward like a funeral procession of the forgotten, the credits of his life. And he wasn't in them. Not as actor, not as producer, not even as man number one. Just gone. He woke in sweat, lying on a velvet couch that shouldn't exist. The room was a studio again, or maybe a screening room. A dozen empty seats, all facing a static-covered screen. Film reels spun in reverse above. On the screen was a man. His face, but it wasn't Brad. This version had no scars, no tired eyes, no weight of choices. This version laughed more, took smaller roles, raised a child, made one movie, just one, and then disappeared into anonymity. It was called The Honest Lie. Brad leaned forward, whispering, "Who are you?" The man on screen looked straight at the camera and said, "I'm who you could have been if you'd walked off set." Suddenly, applause echoed. The room filled with shadows, audience silhouettes clapping with mechanical rhythm. No hands, no voices, just the thunder of performance appreciation. But for what? Brad stood, and in the back row, he saw her again, the woman in white. Same as the day on the burned lot. She looked at him this time and said, "You can still choose to leave the real." He moved toward her, but the room twisted. The walls began to spin like a zoetrope. Scene after scene flashed around him. Himself punching a mirror on set. Himself crying during a take no one asked for. Himself standing in an empty Oscars venue, holding nothing. A voice echoed from the spinning walls. You were edited. By who? By fame? By expectation? By the role they wrote before you were born? The woman reached for him. Come now, before the next take begins. But Brad hesitated. Somewhere beneath his feet, the sound of a director clapping echoed. Quiet on set. Scene 11, take 1. Action. The lights flared, and Brad was back in front of a camera. The woman was gone. The director's chair sat empty. The script was blank. And the crew? They had no faces. He tried to speak, but no voice came, only a silent scream, and the sense that someone, somewhere, was watching, recording, judging, remembering, and in the distance, from the sound booth, came a whisper. You never existed, because the real you was cut. He followed the sound of the reel, an old metallic clicking, down a corridor that wasn't there a second ago. It felt endless, narrow, lit by dim amber bulbs hanging from exposed wires. The walls were lined with doors, each with a plaque. The one where she dies too early, the ending where he forgives himself, the version with the rain. He opened the first one. A room, a bed, a younger version of himself sat beside Gwyneth, cradling her hand, whispering a final line he never got to say in real life. I'm sorry for making our love a performance. Click. The scene vanished. He stepped to the next door. Inside was a film set bathed in red light. A director yelled, "Cut!" But no one stopped. Brad was shooting a scene where he never left Missouri. He worked in a garage, drove home to a dog, no spotlights, just oil and silence. It felt honest. It felt cruel. It wasn't real. Room after room, ending after ending. In one, he died alone in a bathtub. In another, he stood at cans, older than time, clapping for someone else's masterpiece. One door led to nothing at all, just a screen with the words "Scene deleted" in bold white font. He began to panic. Every ending was worse than the last. Every version of him died a little sooner, faded a little quieter, loved a little less. Then he saw a mirror at the end of the corridor. Not a door, not a scene, just a standing mirror, cracked in 3. He approached, hesitant. Inside it, he saw himself, but multiplied. Dozens of Brads, one in a tuxedo, Oscar in hand, one in rags, face torn by time, one in white makeup, Tyler Durden reborn, one, just a man, just William, just tired. They all stared at him, and in unison they said, "None of us are the ending. We're just drafts." The corridor began to dissolve. The walls flickered like film on fire. A sign dropped from the ceiling. Final cut in progress. A voice boomed. "Do you want to choose your ending, Brad?" He screamed into the dark. "Yes!" Silence. Then a screen lit up ahead and a single line appeared. "Then write it yourself." The final door opened. It was blank. A white room, a typewriter, a chair. He stepped in and sat. For the first time in his career, maybe his life, he had no script. Just memory, pain, love, and the ticking sound of film running out. Brad sat in the white room for hours, maybe days. The typewriter remained untouched. Each time he reached for the keys, his hands trembled. It wasn't fear, it was weight. The weight of every role he'd ever played, every life he'd worn like a costume. Then he heard footsteps. Not echoes, not memories. Real. A silhouette appeared in the doorway. Tall, wide-brimmed hat, familiar gait. Brad stood, heart pounding. "You're not real," he whispered. The man stepped into the light. It was Quentin Tarantino, or something that wore his face. Only, it was older, decomposing, like celluloid left in the sun too long.
You left me on reel 6, the figure rasped. But the ending was mine to write. Brad backed away. You're dead. Am I? The thing grinned. Or am I just cut? Quentin, if it was him, walked to the typewriter and tapped a single key. A letter appeared on the paper. D. Another. I. Another. E. Brad grabbed the page and ripped it out. No, this isn't your scene anymore. The figure laughed. Oh, Brad, you think you were the actor? No, you were the film. You were edited, framed, retaken. The walls turned dark. The white room peeled into black scaffolding. They were now on a soundstage. Empty. A boom mic hovered from nowhere. From the shadows came applause. Brad turned. Rows and rows of audience members, all with his face. Every version of himself. Clapping. Crying. Judging. Quentin stepped forward. Let's shoot it again, this time with feeling. A camera dropped from above. Its lens was cracked, but it rolled anyway. Brad looked straight into it. He remembered what the mirror Brads had said. None of us are the ending. We're just drafts. He turned to Quentin. No more reshoots. He tore off his jacket, stood tall, and screamed, "Roll the final take!" The soundstage exploded with light. The script in his hands burned into ash, and for the first time, Brad ad-libbed. Everything burned. Not just the stage, but the fabric of fiction itself. The ceiling lights shattered in waves of heat. The rows of mirror Brads in the audience dissolved, faces bubbling like melted wax. The boom mic collapsed in flames. Yet Brad, standing shirtless in the center, remained untouched. He was fireproof, but not by luck, by design. Because this was his scene now. From behind the smoke, someone called out. A girl's voice. Brad! He turned.
The flames extinguished in reverse, sucked back into the camera lens. The soundstage rebuilt itself into a house. It was the living room from his first TV sitcom, the couch, the ugly lamp, the fake laughter. But it was wrong. The set was rotting. And on the couch sat a version of Brad, a teenage him. You remember this line? The young Brad asked. He said it like an accusation. Brad hesitated, then recited, I guess Mondays really are a drag. The laughter track screamed. Not laughed, screamed. He covered his ears, but it got louder. The young Brad's eyes turned to static. Then everything glitched. The house pixelated and vanished. Brad fell. Through film grain, through credits, through old rolls. He passed. Tyler Durden screaming in a basement. Benjamin Button aging backwards in a mirror. Achilles looking up at the sun. They all looked at him, but none of them helped, because they were him, and he wasn't done. He landed on concrete. An alley. Neon flickered. From the corner, a shadow detached from the wall. It was Angelina, or rather, an actress who had played her in a film that was never made. Her face was made of storyboards. Her hands were folded in scripts. She whispered, If you don't find the last reel, you'll be stuck in the loop. Brad stood, battered and burned, but resolute. I'm not in a movie. She smiled sadly. You were never anything else. Then she handed him something, a final clapperboard. It had no writing, only one instruction: roll to end. The reel was spinning before he touched it. A room, pure white. No walls, no lights, just endless space filled with humming film projectors. Each machine played a moment from Brad's life. He walked between them, slowly. One reel showed him as a boy in Missouri, holding a camcorder and filming ants. Another, his first day on set, terrified and smiling. Another, him alone in a hotel room, crying behind an Oscar. They were all running in reverse. Life, played backward, was still a story. He reached the projector that wasn't playing anything. It was blank. This was the one, the last take. He turned toward a camera that had no lens, no crew, no lights, just a blinking red dot. He spoke aloud, not as a character, not as an actor, but as himself. I thought I was real. I thought the roles would end, but you don't get to stop playing when the script is your life. Silence answered. Then, from the white void, applause. Not thunderous, not joyous, just endless. A looping clap track like the beginning of time. Suddenly, the void twisted. The camera turned around, and Brad saw it was himself filming. Not an actor version, his real self. Eyes sunken, skin cracked like old film stock. The final line wasn't scripted. It came from nowhere, or maybe from everywhere. If you're still watching, then so am I. He hit cut.